Eugene Mallove is joining me now. He has a doctorate in what, sir?
Air pollution control engineering.
Now, does that make you an astronautical engineer?
No, the master's degree and bachelor's degree did that at MIT. Designer of spaceships, or would-be designer of spaceships.
So it is indeed logical that you should be involved in this project called Project Sentinel.
That is correct. Well, I think it's logical. I'm doing it as
logical for me. I don't understand anything about it.
Well, I'm doing it to assist Professor Paul Horowitz at Harvard Physics Department, who's the real project leader in this. Basically, Project Sentinel is a privately funded program by the Planetary Society, an organization that Carl Sagan and others have founded, to listen for signs of extraterrestrial signals coming from the stars.
Is this like, simplistically speaking, is this like right out of the movies, the E.T., and what was that other movie that...
Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is stranger than fiction, really, in many senses, because we have now in our power, within our lifetimes perhaps, the ability to really expect the receipt of a signal if it's being deliberately sent by extraterrestrial civilizations millions of light years away, by listening very carefully and very persistently on some sensitive computer
where's this equipment set up throughout the world?
Well, there are efforts to listen for alien signals throughout the world, but the Project Sentinel is ongoing in Harvard, Massachusetts, a little town west of Boston, and there's an 84-foot radio telescope that was almost scrapped, but is now in use, searching round the clock for faint whispers from space, signals that may be deliberately sent by other societies.
Why was that area chosen? Any particular
reason? The radio
reason?
telescope happened to be there, and Professor Horowitz's equipment, the very sensitive suitcase electronic equipment, Suitcase SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence equipment that he designed and built, was put there with a grant from the Planetary Society, and it's continuously looking now for signals.
Have you gone through the same kind of ridicule that Charlie has described that he had to go through when he went over to study the Loch Ness Monster?
I don't believe we really experienced that. I believe that SETI, the search for signals, is a much more respectable thing in many people's minds, because people know about radio, they know about TV, and they imagine that aliens might communicate with us this way. Although there's another whole school of thought that says they're probably here in spaceships and in UFOs, things of this sort. But I don't think that SETI is looked upon with any disrespect any longer. It's not very well funded, and perhaps doesn't even need to be. The entire budget for Project Sentinel for 1 year is only $20,000 or $30,000, all privately funded.
It would seem logical to me that NASA would be involved in this.
Well, they're getting involved. Their recent funding to the tune of $1.5 million a year will allow NASA to do similar but more advanced work, searching many, many more channels on the radio spectrum for these possible signals.
Let me ask you a question. Obviously, you must believe in extraterrestrials, or you wouldn't be involved in this project. It would seem to me that if extraterrestrials are more advanced than we, or perhaps you're going to catch me right there and stop me there and say they're not more advanced than we are, that they wouldn't be having such difficulty transmitting this message to us. Here you put yourself out there in Harvard, Massachusetts, you say they're trying to transmit something, you think, I'm going to catch it. But if they're so advanced and they've got their spaceships and they're clearly, why are they having such trouble making communication with us near Earthlings?
They probably aren't having trouble. The problem is that we have to know exactly where to point in the sky and exactly at what frequency to listen. This is the whole problem. There's a cosmic haystack. Many frequencies, many channels to look at once, and many different pointing directions. And we've examined but a mere fraction, a 10 millionth or billionth of the entire radio spectrum and pointing directions that we need to define.
What you're saying is they're having no trouble transmitting, we're having trouble receiving.
Okay. We don't know for a fact that they're transmitting. We don't even know for a fact that other societies exist out there. However, the universe is very large. We live in a galaxy, which you saw in the picture previously, of several 100 billion suns, and these suns may be attended by planets, much like Earth. There are hundreds of billions of galaxies in the universe. Now, it is very unlikely that we are the only planet on which life has evolved to an advanced stage. This is the commonly accepted scientific thinking in this problem. And it turns out that it's much easier to send than to receive. It is much easier to, or should I say, it's much easier to receive than to send, because we, at our primitive stage, just advancing a few years into the radio era, we can hope to hear from societies with enormously more power at their command, who would be willing perhaps to spend many, many national gross national products to send signals all over the universe.
You say it's easier to
receive than send.
I have to assume that you're out there waiting to receive something at Harvard. Are you sending messages as well?
No, that's a common misconception.
Why not?
Well, first of all, the very nearest star is 4 light years away. It would take 4 years for a radio or television message or any message whatsoever to get to the nearest star. We need to look at millions of stars, which would take thousands of years for messages to get to them, and we'd be waiting thousands of years for the return of those messages.
Therefore, then, what you're waiting for is a culture that is much older than ours,
Correct.
because they had to have sent it X number of years ago.
The universe is very old. It's probably 12 to 20 billion years old.
If it's an older culture, wouldn't it make more sense? Wouldn't it be logical that they would be more advanced than we?
Yes, very definitely. We are probably one of the youngest and dumbest species in the galaxy, and just a young upstart culture that probably would be of some interest for the other communities to introduce to the Galactic Club.
I love that word, galactic, right out of the movies. We should be wearing those Flash Gordon costumes or something. How do you know, or do you know, have you any feelings of whether or not those other beings that are out there, those other creatures, would come to us in a kind mode or come to us in a negative mode?
Well, we don't really know what their intentions would be. We presume that if they're very advanced, they would hardly be interested in eating us, for example. They could create whatever food they wanted in their own location.
But would they be interested in just knocking us out of the way and planting themselves on our planet because they have used up, maybe they've polluted their planet like we have?
It's always possible, and they may indeed do that, but we have no control over that, unfortunately. We also have let our presence be known anyway. There is a wave of radiation traveling out from our earliest radio broadcast that's maybe 70 or 80 light years in radius. And many, many millions of stars already potentially know of our presence.
You say stars know, as
or
though
planets,
they have a conscience.
people are on planets near other stars.
All right. You have written about something, I've never heard of it before, and it's a little complicated, called panspermia. The concept of where life actually came from. Could you briefly explain it?
The conventional assumption is that life evolved on Earth through primitive chemicals organizing themselves due to various energies from lightning and cosmic rays. However, a Nobel Prize-winning person, Frank Crick, who was one of the 2 people who discovered the structure of the DNA molecule, wrote a book called Life Itself. And he reflected on the possibility that possibly other civilizations might have decided it would be a good idea to send out their biological kin into the universe. And what better way of doing it than to send seeds, send bacteria to other planets, and have it grow and have it evolve, and purposefully so. This reflects back to a theory in the early part of the 20th century whereby seeds came accidentally from other stars. They just drifted through space, landed on our planet, and we are the cosmic offspring of that type of seeding, called panspermia.
If you believe in that, then you must believe then the creatures on the other planets look like us. Aren't these things
I don't
that
necessarily
we see about?
believe the theory.
Oh, you don't necessarily believe
it?
No,
I think it's a possible theory that could be the true case.
We have to take a break, and let's come back and talk about some
Sure.
more theories right after this. Think about all this.
Well, I think it's absolutely wonderful. There's a new book out called Starseed Transmissions also, and it's supposed to be pretty phenomenal.
You mean like
for the decade.
panspermia theory?
Exactly, yes, about us coming as cosmic star stuff, and this is what we've sprouted up to be. My question for you specifically was that if there are indeed transmissions coming from the galaxies or universe into Harvard, how do you decipher what's being said, such as Close Encounters and what they had to do?
Well, the most important problem actually is to find out if there's an artificial signal being sent at all. That's what Project Sentinel is about, to find these very narrowly shaped signals that would stick out like a sore thumb in the background noise. That's the whole problem. But once we see that signal that heralds, that says, aha, we're here, we will examine it in greater detail, radio astronomers all over the world will, and find out what the message inside might be. We assume that if they send a message at all, they're going to make it as easy for us to interpret it as possible. Otherwise, why send a message? So we think that will be the easy part of the game.
Well, you could be picking up messages that we shouldn't be interpreting.
Well, I don't think we have to worry too much about that. What we're really looking for are deliberately beamed or even accidentally beamed artificial signals that stick out above and beyond the cosmic background noise.
What kind of problems do you encounter in terms of picking up other signals that are certainly messing up your equipment? Do you have that kind of problem?
There are problems, but Professor Horowitz's equipment has been designed to filter out lots of that problem.
Such as filtering out what?
Well, spurious signals from radar systems, from aircraft and television transmissions, all kinds of things.
And you did all this on $20,000 to develop that kind of equipment?
Let's put it this way, some very dedicated volunteers did. There isn't, this is obviously a drop in the bucket. You could fund the entire world effort for searching for aliens by just taking one of the 200 B-1 bombers that are going to be built and cashing it in.
So what you're saying is a lot of volunteer...
A lot of volunteer work.
We couldn't afford to pay you, could we, with all your credentials?
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Well, everybody has a prize, Eugene. I didn't mean that literally.
Right.
But with Carl Sagan, I mean, the prize has got to be pretty high. Sir, you had a question.
Yes, on your pansperming theory, do you believe more than one culture set seeds on this planet?
I don't believe for sure that cultures have sent seeds here. I think it's a very interesting idea. It doesn't, however, remove the whole major question of where life evolved to begin with. Even if they did send seeds here, okay, life had to evolve or start somewhere. How did that happen? That's one of the great questions of science and religion.
Let me ask that question of Charlie, who's sitting right next to you. Where do you stand on the panspermia theory?
Well, I think that's a good possibility. I think, as you explained earlier on, that we certainly are fresh young upstarts, and maybe we did sprout from these seeds that were planted.
What is your theory?
My theory? Well, I don't have any theory on it. I know that we're not alone. I just know we aren't. But
so you believe in extraterrestrials as well?
Oh, sure. I think anybody would be foolish to believe otherwise. Now, these extraterrestrials probably don't look anything like us. But so what?
What would you speculate they look like?
I wouldn't have any idea how to begin.
Would you speculate that they're more advanced than we are?
I think some of them could be, and some of them can be even fresher upstarts than we are. They could be, their biological system could be based on...
Eugene thinks that we're, though, sort of, as you call us, the young sprouts.
Well, we are, but there are probably other younger sprouts even.
You agree with that, Eugene?
Well, yes, there are probably younger ones, but we'll never hear from them. We're the transition generation, the generation in human culture where life has evolved to the stage to be able to even think of listening or even transmitting information across the interstellar gulf. Other cultures lesser than we, such as primitive tribes, would have no hope of doing this.
I understand. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about the Loch Ness. You spoke of a selective mutation theory, and I was wondering, has there been any research into the water or the environment to support that theory?
No. You have to remember that I think I mentioned earlier that there's been a tremendous stigma of ridicule associated with this, and it wasn't until about 5 or 6 years ago that we even made a dent in removing that. There is a lot that should be studied over in Loch Ness. And this is, I think, one of the things that should be studied. There's no question about it. But don't confine it to just Loch Ness, because you've got Lake Champlain, you've got Lake Okanagan up in southwest Canada. There are other lakes around the
your
world.
question is very well taken when you asked that, because earlier, Charlie, you mentioned that there was all sorts of interesting water life.
That's right.
In that. Like, what other things are there that we wouldn't find in our lakes here in the United States, for instance?
Well, because Loch Ness is a cold body of water, you'd find a sort of life that has evolved to be able to withstand that cold water, and things that you wouldn't find over here. I can't name them specifically because some of these things are unknown. They just haven't been seen
And presumably
before.
in the Arctic there would be even a different form of
That's
life
right.
surviving.
Absolutely.
As well. Gentlemen, you were absolutely fascinating. I thank you for being on this first half of our show, and for our viewers at home, we will continue on with a ghost hunter, a psychic healer, and what you've just heard earlier is the type of thing you'll be seeing on the show, Extra Dimension.